Good afternoon all, my name is Dr. Mitch Dwyer and I'm from the Tasmanian School of Medicine with UTAS. This afternoon I'll be talking about our Healthcare Redesign MOOC. So to give you some background information, healthcare workers all around the world are under increasing pressure to make a more efficient use of the resources they have. They're also under pressure to improve patient and organisational outcomes. A couple of the more prevalent issues encountered by clinicians when doing so are known as waste and unwarranted variation. So waste is basically anything that doesn't add value to a patient's journey as they go through the hospital system. So this might be something like ordering unnecessary tests, or when the hospital stockpiles supplies that they don't really have any need for. Unwarranted variation basically refers to situations where there is inconsistency in the care provided to patients, which can't be explained by any other factors. So an example would be if a patient presented to hospital A and they got the gold standard treatment they deserved, and then the same patient, if they were to go to hospital B and they only got say half of what they needed, that would be an example of that unwarranted variation, as we call it. But thankfully, we know that the method known as healthcare redesign is a proven means of addressing both waste and unwarranted variation. The trouble is that healthcare redesign to date has mainly been taught to nurses and other healthcare workers via courses which tend to be costly and time consuming. And in the past, it's also been difficult for those clinicians to gain the support of their organisation, be it in the form of time to complete the courses or financial support from their employers. And that being said, there are signs that the situation is changing and that organisations are beginning to prioritise their staff learning these sorts of things. So we really sought to capitalise on that gap. So when looking around for a way of addressing this gap, we came across massive open online courses, or MOOCs as they're called, and these offer free, time-unlimited access to virtual learning environments. And we figured that might be a useful solution for addressing this gap. And it's also a useful way of nurses being able to, and other healthcare workers, being able to undertake continuing professional development, as we call it in Australia, which is mandatory training that people must complete each year. Now, across the world, there are currently in excess of 19,000 MOOCs offered by over 900 universities, and they reach in excess of 220 million people. So the reach is quite large. A couple of the downsides associated with MOOCs, however, are that they've been historically known to have low completion rates, somewhere in the order of 5 to 10%. And there's also a need for digital literacy to some extent, and the fact that they often use somewhat outdated didactic teaching styles are just some of the limitations that have been levelled against MOOCs over the years. So with the above in mind, we developed our own Healthcare Redesign MOOC, as it's known. We also had support from our local Tasmanian Health Service for such a course. So they said it'd be great if we could have such a course to give to our employees as a way of getting them involved in redesign without the commitment of an actual university award course. And we developed the Healthcare Redesign MOOC also with a view to having clinicians get involved in redesign in their workplace. So taking what they've learned and applying it to their daily work environments. That's the end goal. So the MOOC was constructed as a free, time unlimited online course consisting of 6 modules. And at the end of completing those 6 modules, participants in the MOOC have the option to purchase a certificate, which they can then present to their employer as evidence of their continuing professional development. So just a few notes about the development of the MOOC itself. We basically took the content from an existing course that we had, known as the Graduate Certificate in Healthcare Redesign, and we condensed it into these 6 modules. And the format of those modules was comprised of some didactic text, some videos, and case studies. We also provided links to relevant articles, which would help to aid learning. We then took this content and we transposed it to an existing learning management system known as the Wicking Learning Management System, which had been used for several other MOOCs in the past, which are offered by UTAS still. Each of these weekly modules had a quiz at the end of it and targeting that module's content, and participants need a score of at least 70% on those quizzes to progress to the next module. Once the content was developed and it was all onto the learning management system, we then went through a peer review process where we sent a pilot copy of the MOOC around to some internal subject matter experts and some external experts as well to get their feedback, which we then incorporated into the final version of the MOOC. We then tried our best to promote the MOOC via using a flyer. I've just got a photo of it here, which we distributed to several of our partner organisations around the country and distributed internally with the university as well. We were finally able to launch the MOOC in September of 2021. And once it was up and running, we also created share buttons, which allowed people completing the MOOC to share news that they were undertaking the MOOC to social media, namely LinkedIn and Facebook. We then sought to evaluate the MOOC to see how it was going, to see how it was received. So we collected demographic data from all the participants who enrolled in the MOOC. We also had the participants complete an experience survey once they had finished the MOOC. So as of June 2023, we've had in excess of 2,700 enrolments, of which 700 or more people have completed, so about a 26% completion rate, which is really good. Of those participants, around 82% of them are female and 91% of them are from Australia. We had a look at the demographics of people who completed the MOOC versus those who had not, and there were no patterns emerging there. Just some more of the results from our evaluation. We found that the number of quiz attempts decreased with each successive module. So it basically means that people were becoming less and less engaged as they progressed through the MOOC. We also found that in excess of 50% of participants didn't attempt the first quiz. So there were a lot of people who were signing up for the MOOC, perhaps browsing the first module and then not progressing to the first quiz. Interestingly, we also found that several quizzes were reattempted by those who had no need to do so. So people who had finished that particular module were going back in and trying to do the quiz again, presumably to check their knowledge. In terms of the findings from our participant experience survey, the quantitative findings showed that 81% of participants either agreed or strongly agreed that they were satisfied with the course and would recommend it to others. In excess of 80% also reported an improved understanding of redesign methodology and plan to apply this knowledge in their workplace. 62% of participants, or of respondents rather, would like to undertake further online university study. In terms of the qualitative data we were able to glean from the participant experience survey, I've just got a few quotes here which were perhaps some of the more telling quotes we received. First one here, it was a very informative MOOC, however, it is not as engaging with the audience. Including for user input activities, in my opinion, would make it better. We had another respondent say, I found the balance of written and video presentation of information very user-friendly. I appreciated the flexibility and how I timed the completion of the course. And another one here, would be nice to have more situations as an example, at least two or three different settings. So obviously that's just a small snapshot of the data we received as a whole, but some of the conclusions we're able to form from that data were that the MOOC was generally well received by the participants. We had a very impressive completion rate of 26% as mentioned, as compared to other MOOCs which have been reported to be around 5 to 10% completion. We think that engaging with participants while they complete the MOOC could improve completion rates. And there was some feedback that the content of the MOOC was too focused on acute care settings, so within hospitals providing urgent care, as opposed to something like in the community providing GP care. So that's something we can look at improving as well. A couple of limitations of our survey data were that it was only completed by those who actually finished the course. So there's a chance that there were some participants who got halfway through the course and didn't like it for whatever reason and left, and we don't have the ability to know what could have been improved about the course from those particular participants. There's also a question around the generalisability of the findings, given that such a high proportion of the respondents were identified as female and from Australia. So I'd just like to say a brief thank you to my co-authors of the study, Sarah Pryor, Peter Van Dam, Laurie O'Brien and Phoebe Griffin, and also like to acknowledge the efforts of Susie Waddingham, Josh Eastgate and Chris Parker. I've got a link there below to the MOOC itself if you'd like to check that out. And on the right-hand side, I've got the full citation of our evaluation paper if you'd like to read that as well. Thank you for the time, and I look forward to addressing any questions you may have now. Thank you.